Back. It's the 14th of January 2022, and it's our 12th after dinner chat. And this evening, we're going to be in the lovely company of Bethan Beaver, all the way from deepest, darkest Wales, Merthyr Tydfil to be precise. If you're new here, then welcome. Please like and subscribe and share the channel with your friends. Thank you to those who shared tips last week. That was fantastic. Our first set of PD badges, I should have had one with me, are winging their way to you with some little treats. So look out for those in the post. If you want to leave a tip, you can use the QR code here or down in the description below. There is a link. Okay, so slightly different start to this week. We are going to head over to the news, hopefully. There we go, the news. So, self-appointed president of the church, Rusty, my pants smell fusty, Nelson brags about the plethora of invites he has sent out since his ascension to the throne. Unfortunately, subscriptions to his new streaming platform, OnlyMans, have been limited due to the overcomplicated password system being used to access the platform. This week saw members in the UK take to Facebook to speak about the Book of Mormon musical returning to theatres. The church's response to the musical has been relatively low-key. From the odd billboard or pass-along card, the marketing team certainly knocked that one out of the park. The missionaries set up outside to tackle all of those would-be converts who had seen the musical, and we don't know if this tactic has proven effective as of yet, but it's interesting that they would send a bunch of teenagers who haven't seen the musical to go and speak to people about what was wrong with the musical. Okay. The never-ending story that is the British rescue or the church just trying to prop up the church in Europe continues as President Nelson, Bednar, and Elder DeFeo of the Europe Area Presidency will be giving a devotional on the 23rd of January. The interesting thing about this is not the message, but the fact that the message will self-destruct after 24 hours. Yes, that's correct. They have stated that the special broadcast can be viewed from your homes for 24 hours only. I guess if we pay more tithe, then we might get longer, but for right now, you get it for one Sunday only. No doubt the Brit Vengers will save the salient points, rehash them, destroy them, and keep them safe for our prosperity. Okay, TikTok pick of the week. So there's loads of ex-Mormon action on TikTok at the moment. And this is one that I came across that I thought was tickled me quite a bit. And it's from Romy Nomi, and it redefines the phrase fine dining. Have a listen to this.
So you guys know by now that I grew up Mormon, but like 95% of the people who lived in my small town were also Mormon. In school, sex ed was completely limited. We were taught abstinence-only sex education, except for one event where we had a teen pregnancy prevention officer come in and teach us about contraception. And this is a conversation that I will never forget from that class.
Excellent work, everyone. We can all put our bananas in the garbage, or you can eat them. There's potassium in there.
Miss Gardner, I have a question.
Yes, Allie.
So my friend was telling me that there's like this thing called flavored condoms.
Yes.
So my question is, why? Oh, Allie, why would something be flavored?
So that it tastes good?
Precisely. So I can taste with my vagina?
No.
And that, my friends, is a perfect example of how the Mormon culture can screw things up when it comes to sex education. Okay. So, our guest this evening, if we welcome everyone with a great fanfare is the one and only Bethan Beaver. There you go. You got a clap and everything. Welcome, Bethan.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah. Excited.
Awesome. So, as I said before, Bethan is in Wales, which is like, I don't know, not very far from me. But she's not from Wales. Bethan hails. That was a shooting star. Bethan hails from the valley of the Utah Valley. Is that correct?
It is. Yes. I was born there. Lived there till I was about 11 before moving to the UK. So.
Okay. Awesome. And which do you prefer?
Oh, definitely the UK. I would not want to live in Utah again.
No.
No.
Any particular reason, or just all the Mormons?
Yeah, they're pretty much all the Mormons.
Okay.
I feel like there's a lot more pressure to be part of that community, whereas in the UK, I'm a lot more free to kind of believe what I want to believe. So.
Okay. So when you were in Utah, were you fully active TBM there, or?
No? On and off, because my parents. We did go to church on and off. My grandparents were fully active, so anytime I lived with my grandparents for short periods of time, and so I would go to church when I lived with them. And for a short time when I was younger, about 8 or 9 years old, we would go. But we went to a lot of different churches as well, because I think my parents were kind of not completely convinced that Mormonism was true, so they were trying out different churches. So I went to a lot of different ones when I was younger.
You in the Utah Valley?
Yeah.
there's more than the Mormon Church in the Utah Valley.
Surprisingly, there is. So they have like it was mostly a Baptist church we went to, and an Assemblies of God church that we went to. So it's basically Mormonism and then those two on and off as well.
Well, fair enough. I flew over Utah, or we were flying over Utah, ready to land, and I was only in my teens. And my dad said to me, "Look, there's the prison," and I was like, "Why do they need a prison in Utah? Everyone is a Mormon, and everyone is like super nice and amazing. Why would you need a prison in Utah?" You know, I saw a guy outside the bus station, sat on the curb smoking, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's someone smoking in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
what is going on?" So we had this, or at least I did. I brought up with this. It's kind of like you talk about the bubble, and inside the bubble, everyone keeps the rules, and everything is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So no rebels in Utah. If anyone's watching from Utah, pull your socks up. No rebels in Utah.
Yeah.
You're all perfect. Okay. Awesome. So. Bethan, you came to my attention and other people's attention during lockdown, and that was with your work on a new website that you set up called QuestioningLDS. What's that about?
So it kind of started because lockdown gave me more of an opportunity to examine my beliefs. I stopped being active in the church when I was probably about 16, 17, that age range, but I still was a believer. And even as I kind of slowly drifted away from Mormonism to kind of a more general belief in God, I never lost that. But during lockdown, I was working from home, doing kind of 12-hour night shifts, working a service desk, and I had a lot of time to kind of do something. And I was like, listening to podcasts and things like that, and I started listening to Atheist Experience. And the more I listened to it, I listened to it originally because my husband recommended it, because it can be quite entertaining when you get callers on saying, you know, justifying slavery or saying it's not in the Bible and things. So initially I was kind of like, well, that sounds entertaining to listen to kind of people argue. So I started listening to it, but the more that I listened to it, the more I was kind of like, wait a second, I don't have a good reason to believe in God. So why do I believe in God? And, you know, it doesn't, you know, if I don't believe in these other things, like, why am I believing in God? And it kind of started me on a path then of actually thinking about what it is that I believe and why I believe it, which then led me back to Mormonism, because it was such a big part of my life. Even when I wasn't active in the church as a kind of younger child, when I was living in Utah, it's still a big part of my life, because like things like, even like my grandfather was very much into the church and the belief system, and called all his children sister, which was very confusing for like 7-year-old me, when I'm like, he's calling his daughter his sister? I'm like, wait, she's my aunt. How can she be my aunt if he's her sister? And it used to very much confuse me, but it was a very big part of my life, and I knew it was a big part of like my family history as well. So I kind of was like, I need to look into this more, because I left and I didn't actually stop believing, really, other than just think, well, they talk a lot about Joseph Smith and not God, and I had kind of criticisms, and when I came to realize I didn't believe in God, I came to realize more how harmful my beliefs actually were to me, and how they're still harmful to other people. So it kind of bore out of that, just wanting to kind of write about my experiences and write about things that I didn't learn until after I left, so that it could potentially help other people that were leaving.
Okay, so we can pretty much class you as a thorn in the side of the church. And as I was reading on QuestioningLDS, you've got a section on there about your heritage.
Yes.
Now, I was so confused because I knew you were in Wales, and this was before we'd spoken. And then I was reading on QuestioningLDS, which I was sure was your website. And then in your heritage, it said that your great-great-grandfather was Wilford Woodruff.
That's right, yeah.
So I was trying to figure out how a girl from the valleys in Wales was the great-great-granddaughter of Wilford Woodruff, and trying to track his missions to see if he'd had some illicit behavior as he was passing through Wales at some point, and you were some kind of branch off or offshoot, some illegitimate kind of offshoot from the Woodruff name, but you are very legitimate, brought up in the Utah Valley. But that's got to be like when just in England, no one's the ancestor of anyone in England. in the church. No, they are.
Yeah,
but
it's not as common, is it? It's like
that's got to be like an awesome thing at church, just to be like, oh, well, my great-great-granddad, he's in that manual there. That's all about him.
Embarrassingly, I did say that once or twice when I was a young woman. It was a good brag for me, but basically how it happened is my mum obviously is from Utah. She grew up in the church, and she actually served her mission in Bristol. And part of that, she came to Merthyr, and she met my dad, and they got on quite well. She was only here for a few weeks, and was moved somewhere else, and they kept in touch and wrote letters to each other. I think about a year later, he came out to visit, and when he went back home, he rang her and proposed to her, and said, basically that he realized that he was in love with her. They in total, in person, they'd seen each other for like 3 days, which I guess isn't that typical outside of Mormonism, but they wrote letters back and forth for about a year before they got married, because he had to get like his visa and stuff sorted, because he moved to America then. But yeah, they in person.
3 days, that's the territory, like, for the normal walk of life. That's like 3 days, and after the third day, I am sure when you see the person again, you're still noticing like imperfections, or like she didn't look like that last time, or that's not how I remember her. So your dad must have rocked up on his wedding day, and it's almost like a blind date.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think my mum, to be fair to them, they were very much in love with each other. And, you know, they stayed together. My dad unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but, you know, I think my mom saw something in him that she could kind of get on with. They were friends before they were kind of husband and wife, which I think made a huge difference. But yeah, so he moved out to America. And then it was about 2001, he started to get a bit homesick. And he came back to the UK for a visit and decided that he did really miss it enough and asked my mum to just, if she'd mind moving over. And she's like, don't care, make a family, you know, anywhere. So we ended up moving over here then.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, it's I struggled to get my wife to move a couple of hours, never mind like 6,000 miles away from everybody. No, that's awesome. And what it did is it gave us you here now, which is fantastic. I think the church in the UK needs a lot more Bethans and people who are willing to call the crap in a very British way, and just tell them to stop your bullshit.
Yeah.
So the other thing I was surprised to hear was that you weren't baptized in the Utah Valley. Now, you did say that you were going to different churches and different things, but as an unbaptized, like 9-year-old, you automatically become an investigator at church. So I'd have assumed that the missionaries would have been like flies on, you know, crap when they saw an unbaptized 9-year-old come in through the door. So how did it, I guess, not happen when you were over there? You just never line up?
I think so. I think a lot of it is my mum was she wasn't appreciative of a lot of the people that she had met through being active as a Mormon. She'd had a bishop once say to her that people in the ward were plastic people and they were under his control. He was at the time, he was using the funds that they can help like destitute people with to pay his own mortgage, because he said his daughter would be homeless if she had to move out. So he paid his own mortgage out of church funds and justified it by saying she'd be destitute. So my mum had seen like quite a lot of dodgy things happening.
Wow.
And it kind of put her off. And so she was quite protective of us then getting involved in that, when I think to some extent she might have thought, you know, because their classic thing is, you know, people aren't perfect. The church is perfect, but the people aren't, kind of thing.
I hate that.
Yeah, I know. It's like people make up the church. So really, it's not true. But so I think she kind of wanted to shield us from that to some extent. And I can remember times when the bishop would visit and they would help out with like cleaning the chapel and things like that. So there was things that we would be involved in to a certain extent, but it was kind of like rare occasions. It was mostly when I was at my grandparents' that they'd take us to like primary and things like that.
Okay. Well, you did eventually get baptized.
Yes.
Whether that was you regret it now or not. And you were kind enough to share with us a photograph.
Very cringy.
Let me see if we can just zoom in on this. So when I asked what year this was, and the reason I asked what year this was because you're wearing this awesome choker,
Yes.
which screams 90s to me. But this was 2014, so you were cool before your time. But
yeah,
that is the coolest baptism outfit that I've ever seen, because usually it's very stale, you know, just all white against the white background with a floating head. In front of that stereotypical picture, you know, of John the Baptist and Jesus there. But did you get baptized in all that?
I had to take the gloves and the necklace and things off. I had butterfly hair clips in my hair as well, and I was absolutely insistent on keeping all of that on when I had the photo taken. I was like, I look so cool, I want to keep my stuff on. So I kept it on for the photo, and then the elder that baptized me was like very serious, was like, you're gonna need to take all of that off. And then he was like, gestured at my face, you need to wash that off. And he made me go and like wash. I was only wearing like eyeliner. It wasn't even anything like dramatic. And he made me go and made me go and wash my face off before he'd baptize me. But yeah, I felt very cool in my gloves and choker.
Okay, so were the rest of your family attending at this time? Was it a glorious occasion?
My mum and dad and my sister were there. None of the rest of my family either lives. My dad's side of the family live in England, and the rest of my mum's family just live in Utah. So it was just my parents and my sister there with me.
Okay. Now, moving on from this, it didn't last long. So how old were you in this photo?
So I was 13. It was a few months before my 14th birthday.
Okay, well, that's 13, even though the church would like to call it like 20. A few months before your birthday is definitely 13 still. Don't tell Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
So I'll be coming for you. Sorry. If no one knows what's going on with Prince Andrew at the minute, I don't think Prince Andrew knows what's going on. So he's been stripped of all his titles because the Queen doesn't believe him anymore. Okay. Totally lost my thread. Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
So it didn't last long. You were 13 there, a few months before your 14th birthday, but by 16, the sheen was wearing off.
Yes. So I was kind of moving in from kind of young women's into going into Relief Society. I was between kind of 16 and 17. I don't remember. I remember I was at least 16 because I remember being in work when I was still active in church, because I obviously asked to have Sundays off so that I could go to church. So I distinctly remember that, but then it kind of gets a bit all blurred together. But my dad at the time was, both of my parents were completely inactive in the church, and my dad would, not to me, but to other people, actively speak out against the church. And there was leadership there that didn't appreciate that. And I had one of the young women's leaders approach me saying that I should leave my parents, that she'd left her parents, and that I should just leave home and disown my parents because they were a bad influence on me. And I have a really close relationship with my parents, and it made me so angry because I felt like she had no right to say anything because she didn't know my situation. She didn't know my parents or what they said.
Yeah.
And it made me angry enough that I just stopped going completely because I was like, I really didn't appreciate it. And I think that was like the last straw for me. I'd been struggling because Relief Society is obviously a massive difference to young women's as well. You know, going in as, you know, a teenager into what feels like a bunch of old people, and it's really boring and everyone's really serious. And I didn't feel like I fit in there either. So it kind of was difficult anyway. So when that happened, I was just like, that's it, I'm not going back.
Yeah, I think the thing that I saw something this week that really kind of struck me. It was a meme, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something around how grateful, it's obviously a sarcastic meme, how grateful the person was that the actions of a con man 200 years ago were still able to have such a big impact in his family's life and their relationships.
Yeah.
And it's true, isn't it? You're like, that was so long ago. So much water's passed under the bridge, but we still deal with it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry you had to go through that, because I don't know where they get off telling people. One of my best friends was approached by someone in the ward after I'd left. He was very less active, and he said to them, they told him to be careful about choosing his friends, me, and not to be friends with me because I was going to be a bad influence on his kids. And you're like, I don't know, church is full of people that like to say they're your friend until life gets tough.
Yeah.
and then you find out that none of them are there.
Yeah, I definitely
my
experienced that.
personal gripe. But your dad, so he was outspoken, and the bishop excommunicated him on the doorstep.
He did. So I didn't learn until I started looking into things like in the last year or two that he's not supposed to do that. You know, he should have had an opportunity to give his side of the story. But the funny thing is he'd known this bishop for about 30 years, because when he'd lived in the UK before, he was the bishop of the church then. He obviously wasn't the bishop the entire time, but but he'd been the bishop before. And when my dad moved to America to marry my mum, he said before he left he'd give him a recommend so that they could get married in the temple. But when my dad got to America and the bishop over there requested it, he refused to give him a recommend. So my parents couldn't get married in the temple. So they'd had a history of things already. And it was reported to the bishop some of the things my dad was saying. Things which are technically true, but obviously they would get under the skin. Things like Joseph Smith being a paedophile and marrying 14-year-old girls, and, you know, being essentially a murderer and things like that.
Yeah.
It got back to this bishop what he was saying, and he came to the door and asked my dad if he'd said those things. My dad said yes, and I said them because they're true. And yeah, he just said to him, well, I'm going to excommunicate you then. And that was it.
On the spot.
Yeah.
See, that's unreal. But the only blessing in that whole thing is that your dad didn't have to sit through a kangaroo court where he was just going to do it anyway. At least he just said to him, you know,
this is it.
that's it. Don't come back.
Yeah.
You know, if your dad had wanted to, I'm sure he could have done something about it. But I just think that's surreal. Is that the same bishop that was paying his mortgage?
Oh no, it's a different one. Yeah, that was
So you just had a line of dodgy bishops in Merthyr Tydfil.
Yeah.
To anyone from Merthyr Tydfil, our apologies. You know, just a line of crooks who were bishops there. So
it was really I didn't mention this the other day when we had a catch up, but I was thinking about it today, because when there was a point in which I feel like I could have possibly got back into Mormonism, and it was right after my dad passed away. We were in a lot of like financial problems. My mum was really struggling with her mental health, so we contacted the bishop of the church for help, and said we'd had an eviction letter from our house and everything, and he said that he supports life and not lifestyle, and refused to help us pay the rent, but said he would help us get shopping if he could buy it like himself and not us. He wouldn't give us money to go buy shopping. He had to buy it, and we would get what we got. And he came initially the next week, and then said to my mum, well, if we're going to do this for you, you have to like do some ironing or something for the ward. And my mum was like, fine, I'll do that. And then a lady came the next week, and then they didn't show up after that. They didn't ring us or check if we were okay or do anything. They just left it. And that was kind of like, for me, it felt like it proved a point for me that he didn't actually care about doing the right thing, the thing that they're supposed to do. You know, when people come to them for help, he never said, why don't you come to church? Or, you know, why don't I send people over here? We can have discussions. Or, you know, is there anything we can do to help with maintaining the house or anything like that? He seemed really peed off that he even had to kind of get involved with people who were not active. And so it was quite, for me, it felt just was like, well, it proves that, you know, it doesn't prove that there's not good people. There are good people within the church, and I do know people who are very nice, but I felt like it proved a point for me in terms of him supposedly having magical keys and, you know, the power of discernment. He should have been able to do something more than what he did.
Well, when I was bishop, I was young, and I do not claim to have done a perfect job. I screwed up loads of crap. But there were several things that happened when there was a need for assistance. One was I didn't have time to go shopping for people. A lot of the time, the Relief Society president would deal with it and just bring me a receipt.
Yeah.
There was no need, because in my opinion, it's hard enough for people to come through the door and ask for assistance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like,
Do you have to make them feel crap about it?
it's one step away from sitting on the curb with a cup, shaking a cup. You know what I mean? Like, you really have to be in a difficult place to force yourself through the door and
Yeah.
say, I need help. So, you know, when someone comes through, you've got to just understand that. And I think a lot of people sit behind the desk in their ivory tower with no financial issues, driving a really nice car because the oath and covenant of the priesthood has paid for it.
Yeah.
You know, with their manna from heaven, and they have no idea what's actually going on with the person across the desk from them. And then the other thing, the church obviously teaches self-reliance, and it doesn't want anyone to have a free handout. So the whole ironing thing,
Yeah.
like, I'd just say to people, because it was such a pain in the arse to find service projects for people to do for £50 worth of shopping. You know what I mean? Like, I've not got time to find that, because as a bishop, like, you've got a full-time job, you've got a family. Being bishop's a full-time job. So this guy sounds like a right flipping job's worth.
Yeah.
You just want to say, you know, yes, I understand. What can we do? You know, let's make a plan of how we're going to deal with it, and then let's deal with it. So you just sound like you've had crap bishops.
Yeah. Not the best of luck.
And
When I started my website, I felt like writing him a letter thanking him, because I feel like if he'd handled it differently, I might be back in church and, you know, not as well off as I am now. So
yeah,
I thought that might be a bit petty, because he is still, I probably shouldn't say he's still the bishop, but he's still the bishop.
But you just said it.
Last time I checked. So yeah, I did felt like writing it though.
Wow. Well, you know what? He'd probably think that it's Satan who has prompted you to write this letter.
Yeah.
And Satan in your countenance and all different things. So I wouldn't even worry about him.
Yeah.
They hold no sway. It's all gone. Okay. Well, it's good though, because you're here now.
Yes.
And I wanted to draw everyone's attention to the website QuestioningLDS.com. It's in the link below, or the link is in the description below. But as you go there, the first resource I want to draw everyone's attention to is Bethan's general conference kind of notes, which are amazing. If you look back at last general conference, we've got prayers, songs, speakers, and a really good kind of breakdown of what everyone said. Bethan watches it so you don't have to.
Yes.
We praise you. That is it's a task. I watched one session last time for Nemo's halftime show, and it's a thankless task, but we thank you. So for next conference, see, I'm bigging it up now, Bethan. You've actually got to sit and watch it. So if you don't, we'll have to get you back and ask you why.
Yeah.
We'll be like that, Bishop. We will haul you over the coals.
I'll deserve it if I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I intend it's definitely tough going sometimes. I think there was some talks where I had to pause it and walk away from my computer because they made me so angry with some of the stuff that was said, but try and like come back and like calm down and watch it. So it's a balancing act, but I think it saves other people having to go through that.
We salute you. We salute you. Okay, well, with that in mind, I just wanted to play a little game, a little word association game. And I did have it up on a graphic, but My computer's not playing ball, so we're just going to say the words. So the reason I'm doing this, you were in Mormonism for a relatively short time.
Yeah.
But I just want to see how deep the programming went in that short time. Okay. So the first word is just say what comes to your mind. I know what comes to my mind and what might come to many people's minds. And in the chat, say what comes to your mind as well. If it's just a single word, I'll just say a single word. So dark.
Light.
Okay. Hat.
Stone. Just saw the image as well. I'm like, no.
Yeah. Okay. And then we've got mountain.
I was gonna say hill. I don't know why. That was like the first
Hill.
word.
Okay.
But not really.
Fiber.
Being.
Okay.
I guess it's finishing the sentence.
Yeah. I think we've you know what, some people were for dark, we got light, chocolate, dark chocolate, Doug Vincent, that's fantastic.
Oh.
Push, top, donation. So I don't think it was too bad. For me, dark, I just automatically went to skin, which is really bad.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I think it's because I saw a Book of Mormon reader this week, an old one with the old Lamanites being cursed in it. That
Yeah.
was just disgusting. For fiber in my being, on Reddit this week, people were having someone put on what are the most triggering words for you when it comes to Mormonism, when you hear people speaking about Mormonism, and that was a big one. And people were saying every time they hear someone say, with every fiber of my with every fiber of my being, you know, just like that, that it gives them chills. Or another one was even, when people say, even Jesus Christ, you know. Can you think of any more? What triggers you?
I think the word sister, it just gets under my skin really bad, just because of people. I think it's less said over here. Like when I was attending church, there'd be a few people that would be like, you know, sister, my maiden name's Oakley, Sister Oakley and stuff. But it just creeps me out anytime I hear it. And I found some of the like kid cartoons that they're doing now on the Mormon YouTube channel, and the father calls the daughter sis. He's like in a minute, sis, or whatever. And I was just like, no, don't say that word. It's such a. I understand maybe a bit being like brothers and sisters in Christ and saying it while you're in church, but just saying it to your family, to your kids and stuff like that, it's just weird to me. So yeah, sister's got to be the main one. Luckily, I think a lot of the words, I didn't realize that people didn't say things like countenance, like outside of church. Like it's not a word you ever hear, like I've ever heard in conversation outside of it. So it's more kind of like the unique words. I see, if I see them or hear people say them, I'm like, it's it's kind of weird. But yeah, that it's probably things like that.
Yeah, I think my countenance has definitely fallen. if people saw me, they'd be like, "Oh, what's happened to him?" I'd just be like, "I've just got older." That's literally all it is, and I'm not even that old. I've just got older. Yeah, I'm not getting enough fiber. It's seriously nothing to do with Satan. But the whole sister thing. So I was trying to explain to someone Mormon heaven, and they said to me, "So you're all families in Mormon heaven," because they'd have you believe that this image of, I'm sure I've seen church artwork in the past, and when you say church artwork, it's obviously, it's not church artwork, is it? It's the interpretation of the artist.
Yes.
So, but of like children running up to Jesus or to their parents, you know, and we know from the King Follett sermon that Joseph spoke of children on thrones and the children who die before the age of accountability will be resurrected at the age that they died,
Yeah.
but they will have a full knowledge of everything and be like gods. So, like, can you imagine if you take that to its logical conclusion? You've got a 2-year-old girl marrying a stripling warrior, and being like a goddess of her own planet. Anyway, it's stupid. It's just
The
stupid.
more you think about it, the less sense it makes, and that's the thing is.
Well, because as well, the thing is, if everyone did what we're supposed to apparently do, then we won't be there as families. I won't be there as a son to my earthly father, will I? Because I will have my own wife. My children won't be there as my children because they will be grown and have their own partners.
Yeah.
So you end up with this just heaven full of couples who kind of know each other. So the dad saying to the daughter, sis, creepy as it is, would be the logical conclusion of Mormon heaven.
Yeah.
I guess.
Technically, it's a daughter and sister, depending on what stage. It's just weird.
Yeah, I know my little girl a few years ago when I was transitioning out of church. It was bedtime, and she said to me that she'd got 2 dads, and that pissed me off. So, what do you mean you've got 2 dads? She said, I've got you, and I've got Father in heaven. She must have been about 5, so not her fault, my fault for taking her to church and allowing that kind of programming already to be a thing. But she like saw me and Father in heaven as
it's like the same.
Yeah, but like as real.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to explain to a 5-year-old that everything you've told them for the last 5 years is BS.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think age of accountability is a bit young.
Yeah.
Age of gullibility.
Yeah, it's the perfect time to get someone in, because even getting baptized at 13, I felt like I was doing the right thing. Like I could have got baptized obviously before then, but I was so like adamant. I was like, I want to pray about this. The thing is, I didn't actually do anything to investigate. I didn't even, I know I was like a child, but I didn't look into anything. I did what the missionaries told me, which was pray about it. It's what everyone tells you. Just pray about it. You get this feeling. That's the Holy Ghost. You know it's true. And that's what I did to investigate if it was true. But I waited a year to get baptized because I was like, I want to be extra sure that I believe this before I commit to it. Wow. And I took it very seriously. And I just think I wasn't old enough to understand what I was committing to. Not really. I understood I was committing, the commitments in terms of the values and things like that. But I didn't understand it, and I didn't have the capability at the time to analyze it properly. So, a younger child, 8 years old is definitely, in my opinion, not old enough to really understand what you're getting yourself in for.
No. And I mean, Doug's put there, it's indoctrination, and that's what it is. But I always find that Mormonism is quite a right-wing kind of white religion.
Yeah.
In the fact that I think in America there were a lot of Trump supporters who were Mormons,
Yeah.
At the rallies a year ago when they broke into the Capitol, you got Captain Moroni, you got people wearing BYU hoodies, there's a lot of people who are programmed to follow that kind of politics. So I think, sorry, Robert Williams just said something in Welsh. Do you speak Welsh?
No.
Sorry, Robert. We have had a conversation on Facebook about this earlier in the week. Unfortunately not, Robert, sorry.
The extent of my Welsh is like Bora Da. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I can say hello.
Araf. which means slow because it's written on the roads. But anyway, so the political mind of Mormonism is very Republican, and so when you mention Muslims, there's quite a visceral reaction from a lot of TBMs. So I said to one of them, if your child came home and said, Mum, Dad, I've been going to youth club with my friend, I want to be a Muslim, what would you say to them? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is you're not old enough to make that decision.
Yeah.
Because it is a decision that is not in line with the parents wanting.
Yeah.
So first answer, you're not old enough, you know. And you'd say that to a teenager. You'd probably say it, you know, to someone in their early 20s, you know, wow, you're not really old enough to make that commitment, are you? You don't know what life is. You don't know what you want to do. You don't want to tie yourself down because it doesn't fit. But as soon as it's something that does fit and that is their kind of bag and what they want you to do, you're old enough at the age of 8.
Yeah. I think the kids know that as well. Like, I mean, even I was like super excited because I felt that my family out in America were going to be so proud of me for making this decision. And so I didn't do it to make them proud, but I feel like a part of me that did kind of come into account, you know, because I knew that he would very much approve of me doing that. And I'd spoken to my grandfather on the phone. When I was younger, we spoke to him like once a month. And I discussed like going to church and reading scriptures and things like that. And he'd actually paid for us. What was it? I can't remember what the kids, the kind of young people's, it wasn't Ensign. The young people's magazine. I can't remember.
There was the Friend, the New Era, and the New Era was the one for like the youth. The Friend was for primary. Yeah,
it was the New Era one. He'd bought a 12-month subscription as a Christmas present for us.
What a shit Christmas present.
I know. I didn't realize how cheap they are as well. Like, I'm like,
it's like $14.
Yes. I was like, it must have cost so much money. And at the time, I like loved it so much. And I like cutting out the little Mormon ads and things like that to stick up and carry with me. And
my in-laws, the mother-in-law, in fact, the subscriptions just run out because when we moved away, we moved away from where I had been bishop and different things. We moved a couple 100 miles away for my work, and we were away for 6 years. And the whole time, even when we were inactive and had said that we weren't going to church, she continued to pay for the subscription for the Friend, the Friend and the Ensign. And every month, the postman would carry it all the way to my door. He'd litter my house by putting it through the door, and I'd pick it up and have the same conversation with my wife every month of, when are you going to tell your mum to stop wasting her money? Because all I'm doing is putting it in the bin. And I'd just carry it straight to the recycling and put it away. And then when we moved back, we didn't want the church to have our new address, and they still don't have it, thank goodness. So she now gets our subscription of, it's not the Ensign anymore, it's the Leahona.
Yeah.
She gets an extra subscription in my wife's name sent to the mother-in-law's house. So she has 2 that come so that she can hand one over. And so now it's not the postman that does it. My wife has to drive it home, and I take it to the recycling bin.
It's extra work.
You're just like, man, when will they stop? Well, they won't, because we're lost souls damned to hell, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're wretched beings.
If only you'd read that magazine, your life would be changed.
And you know what? I look at it all the time, and it glows. It sits there on the coffee table, and I find that if I put a cup of coffee next to it, the light just retracts a little bit.
Yeah.
As it kind of protects itself from the evil coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, but some people, someone will stand up in someone will stand up in general conference one day. No, you know what? I'm sure they already have, and they've said about. In fact, there was a story of an African gentleman, and he saw a picture of the Salt Lake Temple in Reader's Digest, possibly. So not the New Era or the Friend, but still a book, and that from that he had seen that castle in his dreams. So then he wrote to the church in Salt Lake, and they sent white people to come and colonize his village. So he shouldn't have spoken up.
Yes.
But interestingly, speaking of colonizing villages, sorry, I'm totally off on one tonight. I'm about 3 deep. So I was looking at the Mormon tangents and all the different sects of Mormonism, and there were some in West Africa. When the church first went to Africa, the converts there weren't. There were many people converted. There was still the priesthood ban, and then there were wars, etc. And the church pulled out and pulled all the priesthood out, but the people continued to practice and have their own priesthood, and formed a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like Nigeria version,
Yeah.
and just totally jettisoned Salt Lake City, and just became their own thing. And I know that's happened in Mexico, and different places where they just kind of maintain their own autonomy from the mothership.
It's funny because if they thought about it, if Joseph Smith came, back to Earth today and saw the church for what it was, he wouldn't recognize most of it because of how much it's changed, the ordinances and things like that. And it's just like, it's hard for me now not to be like, how can you not see that it's the same thing? Like, you can say we're the one true church and none of the other kind of offshoots are true, when they've kind of done the same thing. They just think that they're right.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of which prophet do you listen to?
Yeah.
Do you listen to the current one, which the church would say, yeah, of course you listen to the current one, or do you listen to the last one that the current one disagrees with?
Yeah.
I don't know. Someone said to me once, you just got to have faith. I said, faith in what? That the next one won't disagree with what this one did.
Yeah.
If you were to predict a U-turn that the church will take under the next president of the church, what do you think it'll be?
It's hard to say because it depends on. If Oakes becomes president, I feel like it's going to get worse. In an ideal world, I would like them to be more accepting or accept gay marriage, and I feel like eventually that's going to have to happen. I know people have argued online that that's never going to happen because it's in doctrine, but it's not really, because they changed the doctrine to say, for the most part, they changed and twisted things. So I feel like that it's something they could backpedal on. So that would be my hope, but I feel like it's extremely unlikely. At least in the next 5 or 10 years. I feel like they're going to have to do it eventually, but I think it's going to be a slow process.
I think the problem they've got is the proclamation, the family proclamation.
Yeah, it's a big thing to backtrack on, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Doug's got a good point here, that they're becoming more orthodox for the foreseeable future. I think they're doing a really good trick of trying to align themselves more fully with mainstream Christianity. And I say that because of, the new logo with Jesus in the bathtub, by downplaying the secrecy of the temple,
Yeah.
You know, there was a wonderful video a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, of an African American sister taking people on a tour. You know, it was a proper like Hollywood production. Here, look at these rooms in the temple, so that everyone could see it, and it wasn't where necromancers gather to do cosplay.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to align themselves, but with the orthodoxy thing, it's almost a retrenchment worldwide, because growth has stagnated. There is no growth. It's you know, growth is less than kind of the annual birth rate globally.
Yeah.
So that I'd say that people aren't having as many children, or just more people are leaving the church.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
I'd like to see change. It's hard to say, because they're not actually doing much about the kind of bad areas in the church. You know, they're turning around and saying, be accepting of everyone, you know, love everyone. But then, you know, Holland goes and gives that talk at BYU and is all musket fire and, you know, acting like...
Hence your awesome t-shirt.
Yes. Yes.
Breaking the musket.
That talk peed me off, so I was so angry. It's like there's very few things that make me really angry, and that made me very angry. I was angry enough that my husband had to stop me from going. I was like, I'm gonna go and buy, you know, handcuffs and chains. I'm gonna go and chain myself to the local church.
Gosh.
And he was like, okay, so you want to think about this, because, you know, I could lose my job if I do that, and, you know, there's going to be consequences, and why do you want to do it? And maybe you should think about it and plan something a little less extreme. But yeah, I was so angry. I was like adding like pride flags to my cart and was going to like padlock them to the gates around the chapel. And he's like, take a day to think about it. And yeah, I did calm down, and I was like, okay, it wouldn't make as big of impact if I just do it, so maybe I should listen to your advice. But yeah, I honestly couldn't sleep for days afterwards, because I had seen some of the posts on Reddit where people that go to BYU were like, I'm supposed to return in 2 weeks, you know, I'm gay, I'm terrified of going back. And it was just so heartbreaking for me that someone who's supposed to be, you know, a prophet of God and accepting and loving of people would cause that kind of fear in its members. You know, it was so horrible. So it's like to have him, and then he was like one of the first speakers at General Conference then. So he's kind of, it's like he's getting rewarded. You know, he didn't have to sit on the sidelines or, you know, get the insult of like speaking last or the shortest thing. He got like the longest time to talk. And I feel like his talk at General Conference was a reflection of what he'd said earlier, you know, like standing his ground with it as well. And it just, I was like, obviously Nelson approves of what he said, otherwise he wouldn't let him get up and make that speech. So I was like, you can say all the love and light and love everyone that you want, but your actions speak louder than your words, and you're not acting welcoming of everyone. So,
and they will deny that he said it as a prophet in 20 years time. It will be one of those that you wave in their face when they make a change to accept. I say accept same-sex, but I just can't see it. Yeah, even trying to say it, you know, that they would accept that. But when they make some sort of change that goes against what Holland said, you know, people will be like, but listen, Elder Holland said this. And they'll be like, yeah, but he was speaking as a man.
Everyone was homophobic at the time.
Oh, yeah. Everyone was shooting gay people. What are you talking about?
Yeah. They all had their muskets out.
Yeah. Okay. Pardon me. Okay. I just want to go to your website quickly, because you've got an awesome section. If anyone, again, the link's in the description below, but a few months ago, maybe the middle of last year, this really blew up about the frequently asked questions on the church news. So and they've been there since like 2012. I remember discussing the exact points years before, but for some reason last year they really caught traction. Okay, and the one that I guess upset everyone was when they took our planet away.
Yes.
So here we've got each of the questions and each of the answers. Okay, but what do you think of them taking the planet away?
It was devastating. It was, I was getting my hopes up for my own planet, given that that's all they've talked about for several years.
Yeah, and not just the planet, worlds without number.
Yeah.
And where's it gone?
Get to design it and everything.
It's bloody unreal that they would deny me a planet, that I've been and I've taken out my endowment to become a god, and all of a sudden the church frequently asked questions taken away. But for everyone, this is the website here. In case you go to a different one, this is the good one, and there's lots of articles. The survival guide, this is what we were looking at earlier or speaking about, where all of the key points there from each talk. So it's just fantastic. It will save a lot of headaches and a lot of, let me just adjust that, a lot of people having to watch conference. Okay. So speaking of your not so Mormonness, I feel like you've really been lucky in one respect, in that you were Mormon enough, but not too Mormon.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to go through the temple. Because that, we were discussing it just before, and for me, going through the temple, my dad was my escort. I was the fifth of six children. The four before me had all been through. My mum was sat on the other side winking at me. Ooh! And there was no escape from it. It was one of those things that you just did. So I sat there, and the worst thing was when Eve. Have you seen any of New Name Noah's videos or what happens there?
Yeah, I've watched some of the videos.
Okay, so when I did it, you go through with the anointing first, and I did it I did it at the time when you still did it naked. So they just gave you a towel, poncho to put on, and the man put oil on your bits, on your body. And then you go upstairs after that really surreal, frightening situation. And for every young man, this is the worst nightmare, because they put a naked woman on the screen in front of you. And for years, I've been avoiding, naked women and porn shoulders. And then this blonde, busty Eve rocks up on the screen in front of you with nothing but a bush to hide her nakedness. And you're just like, how do I control myself now?
Yeah.
I'm in a darkened room in what has to be a really, really solemn, sacred moment in my life. And I'm sat there thinking about what the bush is hiding, because she was beautiful, and I just think the church, someone somewhere was laughing because they knew what they were doing. They were like, oh, we're going to make it really difficult, like, by putting a beautiful Eve up there. But well done for missing it, because it was a big step for me choosing my own underwear, which is totally weird, 37-year-old man choosing his own underwear. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the worst I ever had was the baptisms for the dead we'd go on.
Ooh, yeah.
trips to the London Temple to do that. But I feel like we always coupled it with something else. So it would always be like we'd go shopping or we'd go to like Blackpool. So like go to Pleasure Beach or something. So it was never just like, I feel like I think some of my excitement was actually just being able to go out, not just going to the temple. We went to the temple, we did our thing, and then we went somewhere fun.
Yeah, and if your leaders have to like do something else to make the trip worth it or to make the trip fun, what does that say about the leader's opinion of the temple?
Yeah.
Because surely a temple is this amazing thing that should be the pinnacle of the trip. That should be the pinnacle of your existence. Being able to do that. You know,
I do have those. I've got my sister and I, when we went, so I would have been probably 14, possibly 15, went to the temple. It was like the second or third time that we'd gone. And they had the cafeteria. I can't remember whether it was Preston or the other one. But we'd taken a deck of cards with us because waiting around for ages. And I didn't know that you weren't allowed to play with cards. So we were in the cafeteria. We were literally just playing Go Fish. And this woman came up to us and said that we had to put the cards away or leave. And I was like, but we're just playing a card game. And she's like so disgusted with us. And then I was like, oh crap, have I done something wrong? And we put them away. But yeah, I was like, I don't want to take it down.
I feel bad playing Uno. My mum used to call playing cards the devil's playing cards. You know, they are like, I can't believe you got cards out in the temple when they didn't burst into flame in your hands.
I snuck in some evil.
The whole room didn't turn around and be like, duh, duh, duh. You know what I mean? Oh my, cards in the temple. That's worse than shouting in the temple. Someone told a story once of a young girl who put her knickers down the chute by accident and tried to get them back and fell down the chute naked. And like, I'd have rather done that than get cards out in the temple. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm not even making a big thing of it. This is small because playing cards just carry with them. Do you remember the Mormon ad of like all the black oozing goo? And there was the video of like people putting the VHS in, and it was like an R-rated movie, and everything was white, and like the oil and the tar started to seep out. That's what it is. You pulled out a deck full of oil and tar.
Trying to poison everyone.
No wonder the woman was upset. They are a bit precious, aren't they?
Yeah.
But let's have a look at your how Mormon were you score. Now, for anyone who wants to take a look at their own score, just let me pull this up quickly. You can go, again, the link is in the description below. You can go to priesthooddispatches.com for the quiz and take the quiz yourself. But Bethan has taken the quiz. Just pull it up here. Show. Let's have a look. So what this is it's almost like a bingo game, which again is gambling and it's wrong. But you scored on this a 38. I think I got like a 62 or something. And the highest score anyone got on this was Roy Han, father of 13 children, and was a big Mormon. He got like 119 points.
Wow.
So, but you get different points for the different stages in life through Mormonism that you passed. So you missed out on a lot because you didn't go to the temple, which I think is a thumbs up anyway. But did you go on Young Women's Camp as a young woman?
Yes.
Just not as a leader.
Yeah, just as a young woman.
Ooh, seen an angel or ghost and borne testimony to others about it.
Oh, it's so embarrassing.
Come on.
It is. I was convinced it was more a demon-y kind of thing than a ghost, but I was convinced that I saw it when I maybe was like 10, and I prayed and it went away. So obviously God made it go away. And I just think about it now, and like I don't even know what it would have been, but it was like nighttime. I had been sleeping, so it was probably a dream or, something like that. But I was absolutely convinced that's what I saw, and that God made it go away. And that was like the power of prayer works and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. That's
Very
special.
creepy.
Yeah. I tell a story on Priesthood Dispatches about waking up just as I woke up, I fell back on the bed, and it was a very real, visceral experience for me, and I got really scared, and lots of things happened. You can read the story on there, but it is real at the time, and you do
Yeah.
tell people, that happened, and then now I think about it, I'm like, I was just having a bad dream, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I'd had like I'd had cheese before bed, and it wasn't sitting right. Okay, so but 38 scores you as a Mormon military runner. You spent time on the front lines, but like the safety of the rear guard. So you were there at times, but not all the time, which
Yeah.
I think fits quite well, according to my scientific method. Okay, now if we look at your Mormon Mythbusters score, so this one, everyone, these are categories and myths within Mormonism. Some of them you might look at and think seriously, but these were all crowdsourced from the internet, which is the fountain of all truth, surely. So we've got 3 Nephites guard the temples at night. Unreal. Now, I must say, your score was quite low, 33. The lower the score on this, I think the better, because the higher the score, I think the more gullible we were. But you got so priesthood leaders can see your every sin when they look into your eyes. Did you sweat just like I did whenever like the stake president shook your hand?
I was always terrified. And it, like, even if I'd done nothing wrong, like, because I was so hard on myself, like, I interpreted it as like stealing doesn't mean you have to take something. Like, you could steal people's time by taking up too much time, by talking too much, or
Like this?
Yeah.
What we're doing?
So I was so paranoid about everything, and I would think, what if I've like sinned and I don't know it? What if I've done this? Or if I accidentally like take a pen or a paperclip from someone, I feel so guilty about it. It was like unreal, even though it was an accident. And so yeah, I would just be like, all those things would come flooding into me. Talking to the bishop or anyone, I'd be like, they're gonna know I've done something.
So something I used to do in Temple Recommend interviews was before the interview would start, I would randomly choose a question. Well, I'd say a prayer first, and then following the prayer, I would randomly choose a question, and then no matter what the person answered, after their answer, I would sit for a count of 20. So if they said, do you pay a full and honest tithe? Yes. And then I'd just sit and say nothing for 20 seconds. It's the longest 20 seconds in the world. And the amount of people that then would start, because people just want to fill silence.
Yeah.
And
Just start blubbering about it.
But at the time, I thought that was my way of like discerning.
Yeah.
I said a prayer. The Lord had led me to the question that this person struggled with. It was almost like before they came in, it said something like the law of chastity. They come in and I'm just like, yeah, they're breaking the law of chastity because the Lord has told me so. It doesn't matter what they say.
He's led you to that question.
I know now. One at the bottom here. Dead ancestors watch your every move.
That used to creep me out. Like,
I was going to say.
It did. There would be times when I was like 13, 14, like my parents might go out or something, I'd have the house to myself, and I would just feel like they were watching me. And there'd be times when I would like be tempted to like put cartoons on or something after my parents said not to watch TV, but I was so scared that they were going to be watching me that I just wouldn't do it. Sometimes I would be like imagining like my grandmother or something up there just judging me and being disappointed in me for disobeying my parents and stuff. It's fun. It's funny to think about now, but at the time it was very serious to me that, and it didn't. I would worry sometimes about what happens when I need the toilet or if I need to take a shower. Like, are they watching me? Can they choose not to watch me? Like, can I choose for them not to watch me? And I just think about it sometimes, and it would just freak me out.
Yeah, mine was my grandmother. She died when I was on my mission, and I was only like an hour away from home on my mission, and I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral or anything. So I think I had some unresolved issues around that.
Yeah.
But she was important to me. And then whenever I was sinning, I always used to think, oh, she's watching me. She doesn't want to see this. She's watching me, you know. Or there's Jesus there next to her watching everything. Or the recording angel. What was a good one.
Your life.
But on here, were you never told that the moon was going to turn to blood?
I think I saw it more like symbolic than actual blood. So I think some of them were like hard for me to answer because I was like, well, I did kind of think some of it, but I was like, I wasn't completely convinced by all of it. I just thought, well, they mean it a different way.
Yeah. Well, it happens all the time because it's the natural cycle of the moon during different times of year, and the way that the light is that, you know, it turns a red color. So yeah.
I think the other one I struggled answering is if you've been through the temple and you leave the church, you forget what happens in there. I think there was so much like mystery involved with going to the temple, and they'd always be like, you know, if you've lied to your bishop or whatever, if you enter the temple dishonestly and you're not worthy, that you won't actually be able to enter the building and things like that. And I did believe all of that. So I think I believed certain things to an extent, but I wouldn't say I was like absolutely convinced of all of it, but I think I did believe there was some kind of like mystical protection around the temple to protect it from like evil.
No, absolutely. The 3 Nephites are at every temple every night. I think there's one on there that if you break into the temple, you die instantly. But my favorite one that I didn't come up with this one. Dead people hold their sacrament meeting in the chapel at night. I thought that was amazing. You know, that if you randomly ended up in the chapel at night, and the chapels were awful places when it was dark anyway, because it just felt creepy. You know, the big open spaces. But that if like the pews were full of dead people, just that one killed me. So Chris Learning, my Mormon score is 60. So where would that put you, Chris? That would put you as a Mormon cannon fodder. Me too. You were all in and would have died for the cause. You owned the front line. Yeah, I was there, all in, the whole way. Okay, let's just hide that. Okay. Well, I think we've had an awesome time this evening with Bethan, and it's been fun to learn, I guess, just more about your journey. Every journey is different. Everyone has a different perspective of their lived experience of Mormonism, and here at Priesthood Dispatches, we just want to tell that lived experience and just kind of heal through a little bit of humor, a little bit of just not worrying too much about it.
Yeah.
Kind of laugh at ourselves. It's a very British thing to do, and just take the piss out of ourselves. But thank you so much, Bethan. We look forward to this coming conference and the breakdown, which I will be using, and then I'm sure using again, and I'll give you a shout out on Nemo's halftime show. I'll say I am using from Questioning LDS. No pressure. No pressure.
Keep the quality. But
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's
But
awesome.
you might like this actually. Next week's guest is really special. I say special. You were special. Sorry, that came out wrong.
It's actually special.
No. You'll see why in a minute. I've just closed the window. I just pull it back up. Next week's guest is President Matthew Gill of the Restored Branch of Jesus Christ, prophet, seer, revelator, and translator. Just let me share this. Matthew's coming on. He's kindly giving us some of his time. And this is a branch of Mormonism that was re-established in 2006 by President Gill in Derbyshire, here in the UK, which is the only one I can think of ever. But Matthew, by as he says, the gift and power of God, has received, translated the record of the ancient inhabitants of Great Britain, called the Book of Jeranak, and another book which we'll get more information on next week, but it all comes under the head of the Chronicles of Aranak. And it's just really interesting stuff. So we'll see. I think Matthew is the closest analog to Joseph Smith that I think we have, because
yeah, it sounds interesting.
Russell M. Nelson is just a placeholder, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, he's just keeping a tradition alive. Whereas in Matthew's testimony, he speaks about the angel Moroni appearing to him as it did to Joseph Smith. He speaks about other angels, Raphael, and different things. So, attention, in the public interest, and so that there can be no doubt, no in capitalization, the Restored Branch of Jesus Christ have no legal or theological connection with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Utah. Okay, but that'll be interesting. I don't know if you've got any opinion on whether or not there could be another Joseph Smith.
I feel like in this day and age, it's not going to get as much traction. I think with the amount of, I think people would probably definitely get involved, because like any kind of high control religion sort of thing or belief system, you're always going to get some people that follow it. But yeah, I don't think we'll have anything as popular.
Well, we'll see
in a religious sense, anyway.
Next week, we may all be members of the Restored Branch of Jesus Christ.
God might speak to us.
You know what, Matthew or President Gill, if you're watching, we look forward to having you, and we will give a fair swing of the bat. I think, we respect everyone's journey, and we'll see where we go. Never say never, but we can say it's not likely. So thank you, Bethan. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Catherine Class scored 73. That's high. Unlucky, Catherine. But for now, thanks, everyone, and we will catch you next week. Thanks again, Bethan.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.